Yes, hello, folks. Welcome to the weekly Matches Native podcast. I'm your host, as always, Phil Brown, joined with my regular co-host, excellent James Rhodes. We recorded this podcast last week. I said hopefully by the time we record this one, United haven't lost. I didn't really believe that was going to be the case. Maybe didn't quite expect the drama of the week that unfolded, but highs and lows.
Wouldn't you say so? Yeah, I mean, obviously, within all the context of it, obviously we'll get into it, but within the context, I think it was a pretty good week in general. I feel pretty good today relative to the circumstances of things. But yeah, I mean, highs and lows and the uh, the absolute nonsense that is being a Manchester United supporter all in full swing this week, huh?
Are you having like ego annihilation doing Buddhism? Because I don't know how it is that you find the positive. I've reading some of your tweets going, I'm envious of that optimism, I'm telling you.
Maybe not optimism. I think it's an acceptance of how bad things have been that allows me to be positive from that,
uh, well, look,
rather than look at it in that sense of it. I tend to get that way, but you're not wrong about that. I tend
the,
to get
the,
that
the
way in life too.
the death row in me, it looks positive in reflection in comparison to me, you know. I'm like the podcast Grim Reaper. My job on here is to be the purveyor of doom, an agent of chaos. No. What Thursday we'll start there on the positive,
Yeah.
right? Um, you have to be a psychopath to support this football club. You must absolutely hate normality and you must absolutely hate emotional stability. You must have a craving for insanity just because nothing about this football club makes any sense whatsoever. You know, we're going into a difficult game against Lyon, playing probably the best football they've played all season. Thereabouts.
Yep.
Exceptional, you know, Bruno Fernandes hitting the bar, the Harlem Globetrotters at times. And I don't know, maybe it's just because of past trauma, but when Garnacho has this chance that he misses, you just feel that knocking of it, you know, on the door going, you know, like Freddy Krueger coming back after you thought you've killed him, and it's the 11th hour he's standing with a knife going, there's just something, and then you need to concede. And the first thing I'm thinking about is Sevilla.
hmm
United threw the Sevilla game away.
hmm
Same position, same basically version of events collapse.
hmm
And once the first goal happens, the second one comes much easier, of course. And you're sitting there going, 6 minutes ago, I was ecstatic watching United play some of the most amazing football that I've
And
seen them play.
cruise through an
And
easy
here they
game
are,
too. Yeah.
6 minutes later, heading for extra time. I mean, you know what I mean? And go to extra time, player sent off, down to 4-2, which just seemed truly unbelievable to me. And the fury and the rage. And then 6 minutes later, you know, I swear I was sitting there and going, this doesn't make any sense. But what a game. It was unbelievable. I didn't worry about all the things that put United in that position when it happened because you don't want
Yep.
to spoil the moment. But seems like we get one of these every year. We got the Liverpool one last year. This one was amazing. Give me your thoughts on Thursday.
Um. Well, I think that yeah, I thought again, like you said, I was watching the first 45, 50 minutes and thinking, it's great. It's exactly what we wanted. They looked composed. They look sharp. They look on task. We're seeing exactly what we hope to see from a football standpoint. It wasn't a result of some, you know, chaos that United found goals out of, but they were doing things the right way, consistent and
Mhm.
productive, controlling the game, kind of walking to an easy victory. And then I don't particularly get it, how it happens, but it is like that. When Garnacho misses that chance to make it 3-0, I remember sitting there and saying, like, that moment, you're gonna remember it because it's that
Mhm.
moment where we've seen before that United, when they don't put teams away, when that
Yeah,
doesn't happen, it always comes back to bite us. And everything changes, and you always go, suddenly it's like, you need that moment, and we never do it. And it's time and time again. And it doesn't even matter what the score is, right, Phil? Because we saw it the same weekend, not to get into it, but it happened. It's been the story of every single game this year. You don't score when you should,
Yeah.
and then you concede at the other end. And it's been
Yeah.
like this for a long time now. And it's every game, and it's become such a predictable pattern that when we miss a chance like that, you almost instantly know we're going to go concede. But obviously, we went through all of that. When they went down to 10 men at 2-2, I was like, all right, we'll be fine again. And then to go and concede 2 more in extra time was, I honestly have no idea how that's even possible. What went on in that time. And
You
then,
know
of
what
course,
worries me about that, James? If you look at
yeah.
that Lyon penalty, right? He was once again, this young Fofana kid running through the middle of United's defence, 3 players on him taken down. Did we not see it against Newcastle? Did we not see Harvey
Mhm.
Barnes walking right through the
Yep.
centre of United's defence,
Yep.
and scoring a goal without any particular pressure on the ball? And I'm going to myself, how many times, Luke Shaw, obviously, the United weren't planning on him playing an extra,
Yeah.
whatever, a half an hour, I think, at the extra time, same with Mason Mount, which I'll get to. Um, and these are mistakes that just shouldn't be happening at this level. That happen way, 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 way too often. I've never in my life heard of a situation where a player's had to leave at halftime due to a personal issue. I've never in
Mhm.
my life heard that 2 have had to.
Yep.
So Mazarui and Lindelof both had to leave at halftime due to a personal issue.
Mhm.
Sounds a bit fishy, mate. Like, to ask me.
Yeah, I mean, something came out today about Lindelof's one, which is definitely valid
Oh, I didn't
in
do
that
any stuff.
respect. Yeah,
I'm
and I didn't want to put
that's
anything. I mean, I didn't want to say. Obviously, we've seen issues with like certain health things and things like that
Oh,
get
okay.
put
All
out
right.
before.
Sorry, sorry,
But there's
sorry.
a, there's a
I thought
genuine
that was
reason.
code for
No, no,
something.
no,
I thought that something had happened between the two of them or
no,
something. I
no.
never
They
asked.
yes, I
That's not
know.
right to
It
speculate.
is.
That's not right. If it's personal, if it's genuine personal shit, it's none of my business.
Yeah, so there was, but it is odd. But it's kind of the circumstances United also deal with, right? It means that somehow in all of this, you have a situation where 2 players have to leave for valid reasons, like just randomly, and you're like, holy, like it's just it
It's
is
like when
part
I
of the
made it to school.
right. It's
Oh,
like it's part of the insanity of supporting this club that things just like thing. There's always like something happens,
can you
whatever it may
imagine going
be.
into your boss on a Thursday night saying both of us have to leave? We have a personal issue.
I know, but
Oh,
hey,
I mean, anyway. But
imagine the timing of that.
outside of that, I thought very encouraging performances from young Harry Maas again. Um,
Yep.
which when I look at that young lad, um, young Diego Leon's going to have to be very, very good to be better than Harry Maas. Very, very
Yep.
encouraging. He almost looks like a Luke Shaw type player, type build with the socks down. Maybe if there is a concern, he's not the biggest. And if you look at
Hmm.
where United are lacking in certain areas, it's the physicality, it's the athleticism. But that's something he can grow into. You can come, you can develop your obviously your body shape. I thought he played. I thought it was very, very encouraging from him. Obviously, the Aces teams are going to be pointed towards the other end of the field, and Rasmus Hojlund, what to do, what to do.
Yeah, I mean, look, when you look at everything, it's the same story as always. Who scores the goals? Manuel Ugarte, Diogo Dallo, followed by Bruno Fernandes on a penalty that Casemiro draws. Kobe Mainu, who comes on as a striker substitute again and scores, and Harry Maguire.
Mm.
Out of the last 12 goals United scored in Europe, only 2 are from a forwards,
Mm.
and those were both by Joshua Zirkzee. It's not a way and we see it again on Sunday, the same problem over and over and over again. There's no goals there. There's no goals to be had. I was kind of looking into it, last night and this morning. just putting something together for a video, and it is unbelievably shocking, Phil. I mean, Rasmus, Garnacho, and Xerxes are the three players with the most minutes in the front three at United. And only Southampton have scored fewer goals with their front three than them. By comparison of the three players who played the most minutes in the front three, they've scored 11 between the three of them in the Premier League, compared to 8 for Southampton. Now you go up to just the heights of 12th with Brentford. Their front three have scored 41 goals in comparison. It's unbelievable. Delap for a relegated team has more with 12 than the entire front three. Leicester have more as a relegated team. It's almost unfathomable, this happening, this it being this bad, but it is that bad from a goal scoring standpoint, and it's every single game. It is the most meaningful aspect of this. It is the most meaningful problem that keeps popping up over and over and over again.
Look, when I look at a lot of United games, it goes back to something that you were saying earlier. They end up on the wrong end of score lines because of two basic issues. One, they concede the most ridiculous goals, and two, they don't take chances. Now, what Ruben Amorim said, there's a strong element of truth to. The pattern of games completely changes when you score goals. So, your defense is not put under as much pressure. They don't have the same nervousness. There's a different confidence when you're scoring, when you know your forwards are going to take a chance, when you're 1 or 2-0 up. Even if you make a mistake, you still have confidence that if you create chances, your forwards will score. And I felt bad 2 weeks ago when I was putting the boot in the Onana bit, where I'm like, look, it doesn't help. And either the guy's good enough or he's not. If he's not good enough, it's not crime of the century, but it doesn't help just constantly putting the boot in. So I don't want to do the same with Hojlund, but I'm out of excuses for the kid.
Yeah.
The things that concern me, James, are I've thought about every possible excuse. Okay, not creating chances is an issue. Okay, true, but now United are creating chances. Okay, doesn't have a left back. Now he has his Danish teammate at left back, putting some lovely balls in the box where you want your striker to be. It's begging for a striker to be on the last defender, to be in front of the last defender or whatever. And Hojlund is never there. Okay, where are you? Are you? And I'm sitting here going, is he deliberately making these? When you're not confident as a human being, a lot of things, that are sometimes the easiest things are the hardest things.
Yep.
Like watching the golf for 2 weeks. I don't watch golf, but I'm watching it and I'm going, if you're playing this game, the hardest thing to do is sink the 3-yard putt that everybody's watching. And it's the easy thing. The easy thing to do is the hard thing, right? When there is no pressure, expectations, when you lose confidence as a human being and the focus is, so relentless on you and the things that you're not doing, you start making really stupid decisions that you otherwise wouldn't make. When you're confident, when you're in a flow state, you start overthinking everything. And I'm looking at him going, Rasmus Hojlund's a much better player than the one we're seeing. And maybe if he was at a Leicester or a Brentford, he would be sitting on 15 goals because it's not the same pressure every week. And, in his defense, leading the line for United is completely different than leading the line for Brentford, right? I mean, the expectation, the relentless scrutiny, the pressure, everything is there's no comparison. So maybe for Hojlund, this move came too soon. There was too much expectation put on him. There's a lot of players who have been at United a long time. They found the pressure relentless. They couldn't deal with it. Some of it will be United's fault, but you cannot continue with this situation. United are not winning games of football because, I mean, the reason why they're in this mess on Thursday for the same reason, they just don't take chances. I mean, I think about the Palace away game. Garnacho straight through. You know, how many times did United miss simple gilt edge opportunities time after time after time
Yep.
that you expect them to score? Even the Brighton away game, you know, one where Xerxes scores, Garnacho should score. You know, there's just been so many games like that where just those chances fall to Liverpool.
It's
They
done.
score
Yeah.
these goals and
Yeah.
it's 3 points. And if United had a top striker, they'd probably be sitting around seventh or eighth.
Yeah, I would say so. When you just count up the individual games, it's like it is that way because it's so many games where it's one goal, and it's just that they just cannot finish that chance, and they're good chances, and then obviously it even affects how you come away from it, because it's different. A game being played when you have a lead, or a game being played when you have a 2-goal lead or a 3-goal lead, those matter in terms of the what happens after that too, how it affects the other team, how it hits them, how it affects momentum. There's so many factors in it. Teams stop fearing you. They stop worrying about you. They stop, nobody's sitting there right now from a defensive standpoint playing the United and saying, "Oh, here's Hoyland Garnacho running at me. They're going to score a goal. I gotta defend differently." No, they're not gonna worry about it. They literally won't worry about it. They're just gonna do whatever they do. It's not the same thing, when it's Mo Salah running at you. It's not the same thing, when it is a top striker playing in that position. It's a totally different reaction from the opposition and everything. And it is unfortunate. Whatever the reasons may be, the goals just aren't there.
Yeah.
And eh,
Let me give you an example of that.
yeah.
When you're boxing and you're in a ring with someone and you hit them with your best punch and they're standing there looking at you, right? And you haven't got enough power to get their respect to get them off you, then they take so much more risks
Yep.
because they don't fear what's coming back at them.
Yep.
And so if you don't chin check a team early to let them know
Mhm.
that there's a threat, there's a danger, which you never do, then inevitably they're going to take more risks. You're
Yep.
you're going to spend more time on the back foot, and United just don't have that goal threat going forward. Where it's I remember even against Forest, the risks that Nuno took because United did it against Arsenal too, didn't have a striker. United matched up system to system against Wolves at the weekend. Now, James, to move beyond Rasmus Hojlund, Ruben Amorim has to start taking some responsibility here. I'm sorry. I'm not saying he's not the right guy, but this is the quickest guy I've ever got to indifference on ever. Where I'm like, okay, I think he's a very good young coach. I think this is a very difficult situation. I don't think any of the problems that currently affect United are his fault. My question is, does this guy know how to fix the problems? And when I'm looking at his Premier League record, James, it's appalling. It's unacceptable. I'm sorry. Like, you should not be losing at home to Wolves, whether Rasmus Hojlund scores goals or not. I mean, these are things that he has to also take responsibility for. And I'm looking at this team. I know he played some young players, and it was great to see like Sir Fredrickson playing, which I think the kid did very well. I understand he has to rotate, but there can't be a situation where United are this far off athletically in the Premier League. So we can
Yeah.
deal with the intensity of Europe better. Why? You're professional footballers playing in the Premier League. Why can't you deal with the intensity? Because that's not ability. I want to now ask the fitness team, the sports, why are these athletes not capable of playing in the competition they were signed to play in?
Yep.
Because United are in a position where they could finish 17th.
Mhm.
17th.
Yep.
Now, James, I'm sorry, like that is a total indictment on INEOS. This was not the plan when they came in. This is their failure. It's their 17th. They did this. Now, I'm not saying there weren't other things that predated their arrival, but they own it, James. This is the first time in my lifetime they will have finished in this position. Someone has to take responsibility. Glazers take their responsibility. But Ruben Amorim is their guy. That squad is their squad. They were the one that made the decisions in January not to sign a striker. They were so the situations United find them in isn't about misfortunes, but choices.
Mhm.
They I understand about FFP and all that, their PSR, everything, but they took a risk in January in saying we won't sign anyone and hope we don't get any injuries. That risk backfired.
Yep.
And now you're in a situation where if they go out, I mean, you can sit there and prioritize Bilbao you want, but you have to win it then.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And Ruben Amorim, in my opinion, deserves scrutiny and deserves criticism. I wouldn't give up on him, but this is the first time I ever got this quickly to indifference about a guy.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I obviously I would feel that a difference in opinion on that, because I was so negative on Ten Hag before, in that respect. It wasn't just indifference for me in that in there. It was absolute pure negativity from my side on that side of it,
But right now, I take Ten Hag over this guy. Ten Hag was living
I
better
100% wouldn't. No, I mean, when I looked at the numbers, Ten Hag had 11 points after 9 games. We were in 14th under his form. It wasn't better.
Hold on,
it wasn't better.
Let me read this to you. I had to screenshot this because it was hard to believe, right? When I read it, it says, by the time United play Bournemouth, Amorim will have gone 3 months without beating a team in the league outside of the relegation zone. 3 months, James, without beating a team.
I hear that.
That's unacceptable. Listen, I agree that Ten Hag was right to go, but every single thing that we're hoping that Ruben Amorim will deliver stuff that he hasn't delivered yet. Like, he has to. I'm sorry, if he wins the Europa League, everyone's going to call this is Amorim's trophy. This is great, and it's they should. But he also owns the failures then too.
I agree with that. But you gotta. I just think within the context of everything that's gone on, I think it was so much worse than we all thought. I mean, when you look at United's windows, like you talk about the squad and things like that, Phil. When you go back to the first 2 summers under Ten Hag, we spent 100 million between these summers overall, and January. I think it was like 450 million between those first 2 summers. None of those players are on the pitch today. None of those players played at the weekend. None.
Well,
none of those players are even there.
Well, Lisandro Martinez obviously
Injured.
Not going to make him do, right? And we
He's
have
been
to
injured
say
for 2
that,
seasons, right? Unfortunately.
Well, that obviously had nothing to do with who signed him. And you would have to say that when he did play, he was an obvious, attribute.
Positive, for sure.
Casemiro has been a good signing. Casemiro in United's slight revival. If Amorim has any chance in Europe, it's because Casemiro isn't in there, and Casemiro's had a decent couple of months.
Agreed.
Over the time of his tenure at Manchester United. That's been a positive signing. Terrell Malacia cost 12 million, which is a left back wasn't signed to start, was a backup left back, also got injured. Christian Eriksen was a free transfer. Right, so he's finished. Right, you can't judge him on that. And who was the other one?
Hojlund, Mount, Onana, and
Hojlund. But we are saying that Hojlund was a murder signing.
I hear you. It's not about Ten Hag. I'm talking about in general. When we look at the body of those 2 years, we added nothing to the squad that we're playing today. There's nothing of value left in the squad from 2 years full of windows.
That predates Ten Hag, James. I mean, the only one.
No, of course. But that's what I'm saying. So when I look at the team and say, it's a 17th place squad though, Phil? It is.
I don't think it is, mate. If it's a 17th place squad, then every single one of those players should be taking a massive pay cut.
Well,
who's paying them like
a they should.
Who's paying them like a top 4 squad?
What's that? Well, yeah. Well, we shouldn't. But I don't think they.
So Mason Mount, right?
We talked about this last week, right? We were like, hey, what is Mason Mount going to show anything? And again, he comes on, misses 2 chances, doesn't really show anything, and that's
12 yards out, ball gets pulled back, no pressure on the ball, and he puts it 3 yards up. That's not acceptable. I'm not expecting you to come in.
I agree with you, but then that's what we have.
Hit the target, son.
Yeah, but that's what we have,
But this is okay. Someone told me Mason Mount's a good player and he's exceptional. This is like the Masonic, inside secrets that nobody else knows unless if you're outside the club. Where I think all these people that believe Mason Mount is an exceptional player, they're the only ones that have ever seen it. James, I asked the question on my Twitter. I look back at it there when Chelsea were playing Liverpool. I think it was the League Cup final. I went to penalties a couple of years ago, and I put out a tweet and I said, I mean this in all sincerity. I'm not, being facetious, but can someone tell me what Mason Mount does well that I can look at and go, he's outstanding? And you know what? You know what? I knew that no one. There's 1,000 different answers to that question. Where everyone, he does this well, he does this well, he does this. Okay, so if this question was settled, there'd be one or two answers to it. If there's thousands, then we don't have an answer, right? Because no one really knows. And I'm still asking that question right now. If that guy came out of United's academy and had just, I'm not seeing it. I'm sorry, and I would, every single player United player I say that about, I want to be wrong. So I'd love to be wrong, and I feel for the lad. He's had an enormous amount of injuries, but I don't get it.
Yeah, look, I agree with that, but
no, I don't. I'm Mason Mount. Now I know if he walked out the door and I said, "What are we missing?" What would you say?
Mason Mount, nothing. Honestly, nothing. It's a warm body when he makes it on for 2 games a year at this point, because he's not brought anything, and I keep hoping and it's just not there. But I look at it that, Phil, and that's all I'm saying is when we look at like that second summer as well. Rasmus Hojlund, 72 million. Andre Onana, 50 million. I mean, those 2 signings alone, if you swap them out for better players, like you said, we'd probably be a top 8 team. So when I look at us being in 16th, 17th, things like that, I can't really put it on anything but that at this point in time, because it is that bad though, from a perspective. I mean, again, from a purely a goal scoring perspective, the biggest correlation to points in the table is goals. The teams that score more goals, the top 6 teams that score the most goals are the top 6 teams. The bottom 7 teams are the teams that score the least goals. I can't watch the games and say United have no way, would not score more goals with a better striker. I think they score a hell of a lot more goals with a better striker. And I also can't say they wouldn't have conceded a lot fewer with a better goalkeeper.
Then why didn't INEOS bring a striker in if he's that bad in January? Surely the correct team, of Wilcox and the football team, this would have been immediately obvious to them. Instead of sending Joshua Zirkzee, because
I think it was a screw up last summer. I'm not gonna lie to you. I mean,
so INEOS, because
for sure,
all of a sudden Joshua Zirkzee went from another striker to the new manager coming in saying he's not a striker.
Yeah, and he's right.
Okay, so then why did INEOS sign him?
No, I agree with you on that. That's why I'm saying, look, I think that last summer there was some good players brought in from a contributing standpoint. I think De Ligt has been good. I think Lenny Yoro is showing why they signed him as a young player, as a young talent. That I again just want to mention that because there was just on that basis, because the prior weekend, he was getting a hard time from Sky Sports and ended up deleting the tweets about it. It's like kind of ridiculous.
Can be an arrogant twat sometimes.
Yeah, like what are they doing?
First of all, I'm glad you brought that point up. Let me just go on a quick. You see the stupid juvenile CBS, adult, humor that's constantly, sexual innuendo. First of all, I don't understand people that watch Punditry, but when that happens to be foisted upon my eyes against my will, I'm like, why does this keep getting shared on social media as being absolute rib tickler hilarious when it's utter shite? Right? And this obviously there's some, Thierry Henry I'll leave it there nonetheless, but there's different chemistries, shall we say, amongst these pundits, which is fine. But this conceit and arrogance, I mean, this guy handled the ball, put France into a World Cup, right? And I don't care. I couldn't give a shit about international football, but how dare you single out a young. Do you know what you were at 19, Thierry?
Yep.
Right? Yep. You had one from Monaco on the Juventus' bench.
Yep.
And then had to come to Arsenal. Good player, exceptional player. But this is a young. I don't know who that was for. His performance was shite. And this is why CBS just turned it into a farce.
Yeah, I would agree. And I'm glad that, a lot of fans stuck up for these types of things on young players, because we don't see that enough of the fight back against some of the things that the pundits especially do on focusing and supremely on Manchester United players. It tends to be singled out more than others, as far as I can tell.
They're turning punditry, mate, into some type of character, into some type of brand, and turning it into some type of performance where people are adopting some type of character and personality to brand themselves rather than just talk about the football. I don't need to hear grown men and women joking about breast. That might have been when I was 9 or 10, right?
Yeah.
That might have been hilarious at 9 or 10, but I don't need breast. Brain injury or something?
I'm with you. I'm with you.
I'm not getting that. I guess.
I mean, if you
I feel
followed
like
it
it's
up with
confused, but
some mature analysis, maybe, but it's like
yeah,
when
it
it
is.
just comes with more memes on players and more of this like childish, criticism. It's like,
But
what's the whole
there's a
point of
letter
the
from
whole thing?
Exmo. Not, I mean, honestly. Anyway, sorry, man.
Yeah.
Just
It's all good. But look, point being, he's a good young player and all that. But no, look, I 100% going back to that point agree when I look at it. Overall, INEOS made a complete mess of the last summer in respects. I think that individually they got some good players coming in, but they screwed it all up. I mean, look, if Ruben Amorim was getting these kind of results and hadn't joined in mid-season, even with the players he had, I would view it quite a bit differently, and I certainly will as well next summer. But that's also, on them in the manner that they went about all of these kinds of things. Right now, I think there's fuck all to learn, quite honestly, myself about him from a manager perspective, because like good or bad, I can't give him, a massive of credit of things and all that, but it is telling, right? I mean, I can't give him massive credit for succeeding. I can't give him massive penalties for not succeeding. I can only look at it and say, it's a waste, and that was if you do recall, by the way, Phil, I did say this before last summer, just because it's not a personal thing. At the start of last summer, I said the worst possible thing United could do is keep Ten Hag and sack him in November. I said those exact words on this podcast with you, and I said it's the worst possible thing they could do. It'd be the biggest mistake because the season is done, and then you get this scenario where no matter what happens, it's hard to watch months without passing judgment on somebody. It's nearly impossible to, right? But I guess that's my point when you saying earlier about the positive and things like that, is I accepted at that point it would be so bad and it would be the worst possible outcome that
Yeah, I mean,
it doesn't bother me after that,
well,
even though look, in the context of each game, I get pissed off, I get upset, I'm angry when we're losing, when these things are happening, but I go back to that kind of baseline that I had already kind of knew it was gonna be like this. I think they screwed up big time on that
I didn't know it was
basis.
going to be like this. I'll be honest. I didn't know it
I
was going to be this
hoped it
bad.
would be better, but I'm not surprised.
Because
And
the only thing that could have made it worse, sacking Ten Hag, and we both said it. That, we
yeah,
were talking about this. If you go with Ten Hag, you have to have him on a short leash. If it's
yeah.
not going to work him by October, November, you have to let him go. But maybe the only thing that makes that worse is to then bring him in for somebody who wins 3 Premier League games, that hasn't won a game in Premier League game in 3 months. This is where I have what I have confidence that this is going to significantly. I don't have enough body
Yeah,
of work right now that
agreed.
says Ruben Amorim gives me confidence that we're going to, because James, the results in the Premier League are a big concern. It's a
Mhm.
big concern. Why? Once we get 2 weeks for the international break and we get players on the grass, we're going to improve. That never happened. Okay, once we have a couple of months of familiarity, then that never happened. We're still playing with an enormous amount of players behind the ball. Why am I confident that will change next season? There's been a lot of Ruben Amorim apologies. I had to apologize over, the Christian Eriksen heart issue. He had to apologize over this is the worst team we've had in history issue. He's had to re-clarify a lot of comments. He has had bizarre fixations with certain players that he singled out. Yet other players he's incredibly forgiven. And there's been, I'm okay. Mistakes are part of life, part of football. That's fine. But looking at this and going, I'm other than what I've seen at Sporting, I don't have a lot of confidence that this is going to get significantly better. And some of that is a result of what's going on behind him. I want to believe, but I'm just indifferent at this point.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. I actually think that's totally fair. I think that it would be like from a purely objective standpoint, if you're a United fan right now, you don't you're indifferent, you know. You would be indifferent as to whether Ruben Amorim will succeed or not succeed. You'd be indifferent as to whether, you know, INEOS will pull off a good summer that gets us what we need or not. My view is that I'm kind of the same. It's more like it's not necessarily confidence. It's more of a matter of like I think it's pretty obvious what we need to do. They have to do it, you know? And we've discussed that here. I have the same concern. So for me, based on the whole discussion, I look at it and say, what does INEOS have to provide this summer from a purely footballing standpoint, right? What do they have to provide? For me, Liam Delap as a striker on his own, not even close to enough. Not even close to enough. Okay. 9 more goals is not saving United. It's not bringing United up to the level that they need to be. It's just not happening. 9 more goals than Rasmus Hojlund does not take you from 17th to even the Europa League positions, which I think is a fine target for next season to get into that spot. I don't think that's enough to do that. I like the plan that's seemingly taking shape of saying, hey, we'll go get Delap and Cunha. You know, we're adding 2 goal scorers who are in the Premier League who are producing right now. I like the concept of that. But it's also potentially not enough. I think you even need more than that, you know, certainly throughout the team. But it's on them to deliver. And I think that that's where it kind of comes down to is that obviously they have to deliver quality, real change, especially in the front, real talent, real ability, real top players into that front line. That's what their job is to deliver. And if they don't, you know, we can kind of start there. Ruben Amorim is 100% going to fail. Like, whether indifferent, confident or not, Ruben Amorim will fail if we do not get in top goal scorers for next season. He will. We will be bad. Maybe not this bad if we get better players, but he will. If he gets them and he gets good players coming into the front line, then the expectation should be, I think, quite high. I think the expectation for him should be that he does a hell of a lot better. You know, and if he doesn't do a hell of a lot better, then it would be supremely fair at that point in time to start to, you know, to cast judgment on the situation. I think we know the reality of it, and I think you'd have enough time. I don't. I think, as I've said before, regardless of whether I like a manager or not, I pass judgment fairly quick, you know. But it was like with Solskjaer, you know, I passed judgment on him kind of after his first full season, you know, maybe during that first full season, and wanted to see serious improvement during that period of time.
But, you know, there's a perfect example. Solskjaer comes in the middle of the season and everything changes.
For a short time, though, Phil. By the end of it,
No,
we
no.
ended exactly where we started.
Well, first, to be fair, James, it proves. Then he gets a summer, you know, gets the likes of Dan James, you know, just really underwhelming signings, right?
Yes.
Which inevitably United lost momentum. Then he gets Bruno Fernandes. Then he finishes in the top 4. They finish second. So, you know, to be fair, he had his period, and I may be misremembering this chronologically wrong, but I would give anything for Ruben Amorim's team to be finishing second and looking like that, because I'm going to be honest, man. I'm as great as Thursday is. I'm sick to death of the Wolves result. I mean, that's a game we've seen a million times, where you're like, it's the same game every week. In this, we can't compete with the. To me, that plants seeds of doubts in players' minds. When you were saying to players already, we're going to focus on the Europa League and we're going to use kids in the Premier League, and we can't deal with. You've already given players the excuse to lose that exonerates themselves. Well, boss, it's not me. We're focusing on the Europa League, boss. It's not me. We're physically not there. You've immediately exculpated players from any responsibility of losing. So now do you go to the fans that are going to pay full price for these tickets and go, hey, I know you're paying full price for this, but we're not really committed to this. This is a glorified friendly, so we're going to cut the prices because we're going to reflect the fact that this is not a true competitive fixture because we're not really committed to it. Fans don't get to do that. So to me, when you're telling players, no, it's okay, we're just going to focus on the Europa League, that sends all the wrong. That's how that is a contributing factor to what happens against
Oh, for
Wolves.
sure, 100%. I agree with that.
But James,
But
this is
isn't that kind of normal?
doing this?
But
Why is he
isn't that
telling players? First of
But
all, if you look
what's
at
the difference?
well,
What's
the
the
difference
difference
is that
between this and a mid-table team that's, we're safe from
well, no,
relegation. They're on the
okay,
beach by this week. Every year we
because
see that
United
with
are not
10
a
teams.
mid-table team. United should
But
be
we are
embarrassed.
now.
Well, no, but James, hold on. United should be embarrassed. I know they're where they are, but Ruben Amorim is asking questions right now about where they're going, and players need to answer that. Do you hear next season or not?
Yeah.
Secondly,
Sure.
considering the difference financially just to finish in one or two places above, and
I
given
know
the
it's
fact
worth a few million,
yeah, people are losing their jobs, this matters. So it matters a lot. These other
But
teams that are on the beach are mid-table
yeah,
teams that aren't sitting sacking their staff.
I
Right?
get
They
that
aren't paying
aspect,
their
but
players 300 grand a week. They aren't asking fans to pay another extra percent on top of the ticket that they were already paying. No, this is not the same. If Brighton's in mid-table on the beach, Brighton are paying their players as mid-table players.
yeah.
That's their expect. These people have completely underperformed from top to bottom. No one gets to rate off. If they're going to rate off football games, then rate them off for the fans too. Tell them you don't have to. See, the
I
thing
hear
is,
that. Look,
I can't charge full admission and then say, well, we're not committed. What are fans
I
paying for?
hear that. Look, I hear that aspect of it. I do totally. But then I look at like Newcastle, right? Xerxes goes out there, puts everything into it to try to win that game.
That's
He's
his
out for the
job.
season.
Right,
I
James?
know, but then he's out for the season.
Okay,
If
but
you're the
that's his
coach
job,
in that
James. You
position,
can't go out and not
no,
play
but
100% in case
I
you get
get
injured.
that. I get that, but I'm telling you, I'm telling you, from as a fan perspective, I couldn't give a fuck. I'm not going to the games and paying though,
I do give
because
a
I
fuck.
couldn't care if they put 11 kids out there
No,
if
I
they were
do.
going to be ready for the Europa League.
I
Myself,
don't
and
think
I
that.
think you're going to split opinion on that though. I think you will split opinion on that at this
One,
stage in the
Jim, it's
season.
totally unfair on the kids, right?
I
Because
understand
they
that
have to be
aspect, but
ready for that opportunity. They can't just be thrown in
yeah,
there because someone doesn't want to get injured.
I
Secondly, once players start picking games because they don't want to get injured, because they want to be available for this, you have a problem.
no, I don't think the
Bruno
players should,
Fernandez
but I
on the
think the coach
Bruno
has to
Fernandez at the
make that
weekend.
call.
Well,
Yeah.
Bruno Fernandez at the weekend is nagging. I want in that game. Let me play. Let me play.
Yeah.
Go out, Ferguson. Anytime you'd leave a player out for a friendly, even I want to play. That's what players do. If a player's coming to you and saying, you know what, boss, I'm not really fancying that Wolves at home game. I want to be a fit for the above, but you have a problem immediately.
Oh, for
Immediately.
sure, for
Right?
sure, for sure.
You
Look, I agree
cannot
with
let
you.
that mentality develop at a football club where players are going to pick and choose their games. And you cannot, as a Manchester United manager, look at any game because they should be embarrassed. The objective right now should be you need to win every single point available on that table because wherever you finish is an embarrassment to this football club and it's going to go down in Premier League history. Okay, you are responsible for this. If you care about the fans, if you care about the shirt, if you care about your professional pride, you do not write games of football off. Okay, that is once you get that mentality in a football club, you have every single player in that United team should be going on that field going, I am making sure I'm playing next week. Not I know I'm not playing next week because the guy that wants to play is sitting there because he wants to go leave Ronaldo out for a game.
Yeah. Well, I get it, but
this is what they don't do that.
isn't it just
do that? You have a problem with.
I understand the principle of it, but isn't it like I do get the principle of it. And I'm not sure that I would say there was any players in particular I felt weren't trying or weren't doing what they could in there. I mean, I think there's a number of players that didn't play that played a long game on Thursday night because of
Sure,
course it
that's
went to
different. If the manager
120
wants to
minutes. You
rest
know
you,
what I
that's
mean?
fine.
Guys like that. Obviously, that's why Bruno was on the bench because he played 120 minutes and he does need the rest from time to time. But I do look at it, Phil, on that respect, and I think, isn't it natural? Like I can lie. I can sit here and lie no matter what, and say it, but like, and I'm not talking necessarily about professional pride, but it's like, it's almost automatic, that there's going to be that 1%, 2% drop off in a mental state of a game. It's like, because why do you play the games for? What do you play the games for? What is the goal? What is the outcome? And I just think it's almost impossible to escape that. I mean, we've seen it with teams heading for big trophies in different tournaments, even good teams, even top teams, where they'll lose a couple games here or there while they're focused on the Champions League. We see stuff like that happen all the time in football.
You can do that if you have the League One.
No, I
If
get
you are
that part of
still in a
it. Yeah.
competitive race for any competition, the big teams have to handle this. If you go into the Champions League and you're playing in a Real Madrid on a Wednesday and then Liverpool away on a Saturday or something, you have to deal with that.
Yeah.
That's what top footballers deal with every day. That's what top football is. If you were saying, look, I can only give 100% for one game a week, then you will not win trophies. It's just
Yeah.
as simple as that. The best team handle the press. I remember United having title run-ins where they've got 5 or 6 massive games in the space of
Mhm.
2 weeks, and they win 5 or 6 of them. If you were the top teams that win trophy after trophy after trophy, these are teams that deal with the pressure, the demands of Wednesday night football and
Mhm.
weekend
Of
football.
course.
Half of these United players aren't even in their national team. If these players that are sitting in 13th or 14th, 15th
Mhm.
are saying, look, Thursday night weekend, that's a bit much. They're asking a bit much for me. These are frauds. You can't have these players at your football.
Yeah.
You can have a situation where Champions League game is a week away. We've already won the league. We'll put out, a weekend team at the weekend or in the League Cup, fine. But if you're 33 games in and you're saying we're just going to write off first of all, how many of
Well,
these players can be confident they're even going to be picked? They need to play their way into a team.
for
None of
sure.
them,
For
how
sure.
many of them even deserve to be picked? Most of them
Yeah.
should be going out there trying to. If you're Rasmus Hojlund, can you pick your games? Son, you need to start scoring a goal.
Of course.
Right?
Of
I
course.
mean,
No,
if
but
you know what I mean? Like, go win a game of football against Wolves and then show me you should be playing.
no, look, I'm with you on that. I just, I just look at it from a perspective of, if they go out there and do 100%, not saying they shouldn't, from a player perspective. I'm saying from a decision-making perspective of like playing some youth, because I would bet money we'll see against Bournemouth some youth in the side too, and not the full strength 11. Because I look at a game like that and I say, okay, if we you look at the possibilities. A player goes out there and gets injured. That's a key player for Thursday for your game against the Athletic Club. What are you competing for? You're competing for the difference between 14th and 11th. Like it's just a cost versus a risk is massive on
Well,
that.
what if
To
you
do
don't
that,
play
like if you have
them?
any fear, of a player who could get injured and things like that.
But if you're going to not play them and then throw them into a game when they're off form or then you take enormous risk. Sure, they're fit, but they're shaking.
Yeah,
Like
I get that
Rasmus
part of it
Hojlund has
too. I
been
mean,
fit.
depending on
Rasmus Hojlund couldn't play 2 games in a
yeah,
week last week, right?
yeah,
Last season because he had his
yeah,
back. Now he's
yeah,
fit every week,
yeah.
right? Now, would you have rather had the Rasmus Hojlund last season or this one?
No, look, I
The
get that. I
fitness
get that
aspect is
aspect, but
great, but it still depends what you bring on the field.
I'm just saying I think maybe it's a little bit like maybe it's a little bit overly, because obviously I think Rasmus plays on Sunday against Wolves because he's trying to play him into some kind of form because he's his only striker, right? That's what he's trying to do, right? Same goes for Garnacho, trying to get them, even though they both started against Lyon, to say, look, you're all we got. We're gonna have to play you
Mm-hmm.
on May 1st. You're playing, so can you find some kind of form in that? But then you get guys who are like, you're not worried about Bruno Fernandez's form, my opinion. I don't think Bruno's, sitting out a game is going to mess up his form. I think he's actually performed better when he's actually finally gotten a rest here or there. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? But look, it's a complicated. I think it's complex. I guess my perspective on it is I don't feel emotional about the game against Wolves
I
personally.
do, man.
Like I get that, and I think it's going to be very split on opinions. And I'm not trying to dismiss that aspect of it.
I, I
Um, you know,
I think those games are far more telling than going away and beating Arsenal in the FA Cup. Because to me, you're going to play more Wolves than you're going to play Arsenals. And if
yeah,
you cannot get yourself up to win a routine game and understand that you are playing not just to get into your Europa League
hmm
semi-final team, you're playing for your future at this
yeah,
football club,
yeah,
or you're playing for your future at some other football club. To me, how many players, if the season ended right now, would leave the season, end the season with a better reputation than the one they started it with? Like, if I'm desperate. If I'm looking at Maguire the weekend on Thursday, going, I want my Maguire moments. Okay, I
Yep.
want that. I want I
Yeah.
sitting on the bench saving me for a game. I'd rather be the players want to play football. And I
Yeah.
understand that there's a risk. If you're 3 days out from a final and it's the last game of the season and it's the difference between 13, 14, that I get, right? But right now, we're too far out.
Mm.
And if I'm Hojlund, I'm looking at a mad coming over my shoulder going, I need to play. I want every
Mm.
minute. Wolves at home, I'd rather play against Wolves at home than Real Madrid at home.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
this is what I need.
No, no,
So
you're totally
anyway,
right
no,
from a
it's just
player
2 points. I
perspective.
get what you're saying, but like,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
No, look, I actually totally agree with you from a player perspective. Maybe it's just because I've already given up on Rasmus Hojlund, to be quite honest. I
yeah,
don't
and
give
that's
a fuck what he
fair.
does, at this
That's
point in
fair.
time. It's like I don't give a shit. I was happy with the
Mm,
performance from
yeah,
Amos.
that's fair.
I was happy with the performance from Fredrickson. I don't care how Hoyland does at this point. He can't be playing much next year. I've given up on it. I'm not trying to kick him while he's down, but from a team perspective, I really couldn't give a shit how Rasmus Hojlund plays right now because
God, he
I'm
just
not
looks,
expecting him
yeah,
to do anything for us the rest of the season. I'm
he,
just not,
yeah,
you
he
know.
just looks like a kid that's suffering,
Yeah.
and
It might be bad. I would even much prefer he leaves, and then I'm not it's not even like that's not a hateful perspective. He goes on loan to Italy, he probably do better and feel better and have a better career out of it. It's like one of the things I do want United as from my judgment on United as well. One of the things I would like them to do is when players aren't making it, I do think there's times we've held on so long that we've
yeah, I know.
devastated their
Hmm.
careers by the time they leave. I think you take a player like Hoyland, Garnacho could fall into this too, not in the same way, but could. And you
Mm,
say, if you let them go now, I think they'd be better off
yeah,
than they stay a few more years. Their confidence plummets even further, and then they never have it. We've seen that, right? With players, it's like they're ruined by the time they leave United rather than saying, okay, we just move them on quickly. I mean, I even look at Pogba and I thought it was kind of a shame how it ended
hmm,
with him because he wanted to leave years prior. He felt there was a lot similar story we've seen many times, broken promises, whatever the reasons that he has his own faults in that
yeah.
too. It went on and on and on. And by the time it was over, he was like a broken man, honestly, from a football perspective. And he kind of has never really recovered from that, frankly. And it was like he was injured all the time. And it's just, we've seen it too often. I don't want to keep seeing that. I
Mm,
feel like you look at Scott McTominay. I think he's kind of the same player he was here at Napoli, but he's doing well for himself.
hmm.
We didn't wait till he's 32 and broken, and everybody's like, and he's a useless player by then to sell him. And I think it's better for the teams. That's one thing I'd like to see. I think it would be better for someone like Hoyland's career to not, sit and stew on this forever, but to move on and to be better at moving those players on as well. I think
There's
that's part of my
Yeah.
judgment.
With United, there's so many contaminating factors in that
Yeah.
issue. Because one, it's about United can't afford the mistake anymore, so
Yeah.
they stay with players that they've signed for decent money in the hope that they can somehow turn them into a top player. Two, the
Yep.
threshold for consequence has been way lowered because United standards have dropped, so you get away
Yep.
with it a lot longer. I mean, Massimo Taibi and got 3 mistakes and he was launched out. I mean,
Yes.
you know, Onana, has done that in the game.
I mean, look at like
And I'm
Joe
not
Hart and
criticizing
stuff and
Onana, but
what Pep's done and yeah,
standards are different.
Yeah.
The fact that there's also so many other issues at the club, it's really hard to
Yeah.
turn around and say this is solely as a consequence of the player. You think if we fix this problem, the player will improve because it always seems that there's so many other contributing factors. But you're at a point now where it's like, either you find a way to score goals, or you repeat the season because
Yep.
I agree with you in the sense that I don't believe that it's on ability level that it's a 15th place squad, but they're deservedly in 15th
Yeah.
place. It's as
Yeah.
simple as that. And so,
Yeah.
that
That's kind
there's
of what I mean. Yeah.
it's not a
Yeah.
false position. That's a
Yeah.
truly reflective of their levels right now, and
Yeah.
whatever reason they're at that level, that's where they're at. Um, but nonetheless, disappointing result against Wolves.
Yep.
If I could have picked one game to win, I would have picked the Lyon game.
Yeah.
And it was good to see like Sakabi Manu and stuff obviously come back between with a great goal and some the player United badly need.
Yes.
Anything else before we go, mate?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we've about covered it. Do you think I just wanted to ask this question of you from your opinion from this kind of different standpoint of what I said. What are you in agreement with me on this point of this summer, purely from a football perspective of signings? What is United's biggest problem that they need to deliver? Do you think that they will get it done based on the things we've heard too?
I think that they'll bring signings in, but whether they get signings of the requisite quality, I don't know, because some of that's going to depend on where they finish. Look, to me, they need at least two more forwards.
Yep.
If they get two central strikers, they're going to have to make a decision on either Hojlund or Xerxes because you
Yep.
can't carry forward them. It's as simple as that.
Yep.
They have a problem in midfield in that RFC Ericsson's going
Leaving.
to
Yep.
be replaced or already short in midfield. I mean, to me, United needs at least they're going to need another centre back with Johnny Evans going, Lindelof
And
going.
Lindelof. Yep.
There's question marks over the goalkeeper. To me, you're looking at signings that are physical, that are athletic, all the way down the spine of the team. So I'm saying that they need at least a centre back, very possibly a goalkeeper to take
A
a huge risk in
midfielder.
doing that next
Yeah.
season.
Yep.
At least a very, very able-bodied number two where you would trust putting in. They
Yeah.
need,
Yeah.
and to me,
Agreed.
at
Yep.
least two strikers. So you're looking to me at least one, two, three, 5 or 6 signings easily.
Yeah. And I know we've both shared some doubts on Delap. Do you think it's better? Do you think it not fixes some of it, but do you think it helps some of it if you can get Delap and Cunha as well as an additional player coming in as another kind of proven Premier League,
Mm,
player coming in there? Because I have some big doubts on Delap being the guy as another young player to come in. I'm more comfortable with it with Cunha, and it does seem from reports and also information that it's probably plan A is right now from at least what they can afford is Delap and Cunha, given the financial circumstances. I'm not saying is that good enough to
mm.
win the league, but it's a significant improvement, I would say. I mean, obviously on what we have. Where do you think it's enough to do significantly
Yeah.
better than we've done, at least in right now?
Yeah, so this is where it gets a bit tricky. One, if you don't have to complete the puzzle this summer, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And you
yep,
can't buy to try to win the league because you're
yes,
going to get it wrong. You have to buy to
yeah,
finish top four, and then you
yeah.
consolidate and you buy on top of that, and you
Maybe
get
top
accelerated.
5, but yeah.
Yeah, so somewhere around there, you have to
Yep,
shoot for significant improvement, but you have to make sure that the players you buy are not going to need to be replaced in a year.
yep.
That the next part of the jigsaw
You're
is
starting
that
over
they will all
again and
fit
again, yeah,
together.
yeah,
So you have to make sure that whatever you buy, these are key positions that are covered that will result in you know, having significant improvement because otherwise you don't get the final pieces. It just falls
yep,
apart because the good players are going to leave and
yep,
you're not top players have other choices. So it's fine if you don't have if you're going to have a an ocean worthy vessel,
mhm,
you have to make sure that you have enough of that vessel built that's going to stay buoyant. So you
yep,
can't, build the sails and you can't build the engine and then throw it on the water because it sinks. So you
yep,
have to build properly in a way that allows you to put the added touches to it at the end,
yep,
rather than have to continue to redo it. And it's always been the last part United have never been able to complete. So it's going to take very astute buy-in, and you have to get the right personalities. And if everything goes well, then you have the momentum to build on something. But if not, I know that you were saying you were expecting this with Ruben Amorim teams. I don't think he needed one. I don't think he was, and I think that they were expecting by the summer they'd have momentum. It would be an attractive football club to come to, and that hasn't
I
quite
wouldn't say
happened.
this bad. I would agree with that for
Yeah,
sure. Not this bad. I think there's of the mitigations of losing, Ahmad and Lissandro and a few other things probably make it a lot worse. But yeah, I would tend to agree there. So All right, cool. But yeah, I just wanted to get your perspective on that too.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I think the Champions League qualification is absolutely massive. Otherwise, what will happen this summer will be
Have to take 2
signings,
summers
but not
essentially.
signings
Yeah.
that are going to get you in the top
Yeah.
four. I think it'll have to
Yes.
be a slower
It'll be a half
progress.
stage rather
But
than the full step. Yep.
yeah, but
I
that's
would
still
agree.
risky. But
Yep.
okay, matey, we'll leave it there. Thanks to all of you for downloading the podcast, for tuning in as always. We'll be back next week. At least this week, I got through it with having an earthquake. No, so if you want to send your
Not
disaster
outside anyway.
click the link below to send your disaster relief funds. Registered at the local Bevmo here. I'll take McCallan, Age McCallan, and all that there. These are vital resources at this time of need. Thank you very much. Next week I'll have Sarah McLaughlin and a puppy in my arm when we sing in Arms of an Angel. So you keep sending that money, mate, okay? All right, we'll talk to you later. Bye, folks.
See you later.
Yeah, mate, bye.